Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. Today we are doing my November reading wrap up. I read 13 books this month, and to be honest, I think I've had a very good reading month. I've read a lot of books that I've really enjoyed. I had one 5-star, a whole lot of 4 stars, and I think only 2 3-stars, but even then I did enjoy them. So let's just get into the books that I read. The first book I read on Kindle, I read Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. This one I rated a 4.5 stars. I did give it like a 3.5 chili pepper rating. There was quite a lot of spice in this book. I think I've seen quite a few people say it was a bit too much, but if you are a long time watcher of my channel, you know I love a good spicy book. So I would say starting off this book, it was a little bit slow. It took me a little while to think, right, where's this going, and to kind of get with the writing, if that makes sense. But once she goes into Phantasma, it's just all kicks off. It goes, you really end up being in the story once she goes into the house, and there's just so much drama and danger and spice, and it's just, you just want to keep reading it. So in this book, it is like that trials trope. She's got like 9 trials that she has to pass, and if she's alive by the end of it and finishes the 9th trial, she gets basically whatever she wants. And I really liked this version of what the trials were. I don't know how to explain it. They just seemed really high stakes, and the trials were a lot different than any trials I've read in previous books. Like when you think of like Seven in the Wings of Night, Powerless, I was gonna say Powerful, no, that's a novella. Powerless, like there were completely different types of trials, which I did really enjoy. It felt quite fresh, like a new take on that trope. Yeah, I just think it was all very well thought out with the clues and what you had to do and the little hints, things like that. It was, yeah, I just really enjoyed the book. I thought it was really fun. I loved Blackwell as a MMC. It was the first book I read this month, so I have nothing else to say aside from what I wrote down here. Next, I read A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. That one I rated a 4 stars. This book is about Dracula's first wife, Constanda. I think she had a different name before she got turned, and I don't think we ever actually learn what her name was. But basically it's following, this is written in the second person, so it's as if she's writing letters to Dracula, and he's never named. She never calls him by his name. She only refers to him as you, and she's kind of talking through her experience from her being turned to the centuries that they spent together up to the end of the book. I don't know, is it? I like how it's right here. I don't know why I didn't pick it up. Yeah, it doesn't tell you what I was going to say on the back, so I'm not going to say it. This one I have written it down as it being a dark romance, and it is, but the romance part isn't what you think it's going to be. And I'll leave that at that. I give it a 1.5 chili peppers. It wasn't, sex was kind of a common topic, but it was never in a whole lot of detail until more towards the end, and even then it wasn't in a lot of detail. I will say this book, I wanted to read it in October, and it's a really good October read, I think, because it's a perfect like dark gothic vampire, obviously it's vampires, vibe, but it just feels, it's a perfect dark gothic feel and like vibe. Yeah, there is one thing, the dark part of the romance with Dracula, I feel like it was quite glazed over, and the cannot get the word out. The manipulation felt quite glazed over, but because the whole point is that she's meant to feel that she loves him, I think it was written quite well considering it's in her point of view. The manipulation doesn't seem like it's that bad. Maybe I'm just used to really bad dark romances, I don't know. It felt like she didn't realise, and therefore didn't tell us quite the extent of what he was like. It was more, it was alluded to, based off of what she was describing him as. And at first I thought, this is not, like, he doesn't seem that bad. Like, you're sometimes saying he's awful, but then you're not showing how he was awful. But when you think about it, considering she's been like indoctrinated to love him, it makes sense. Yeah, so this one I do really recommend. I think she's bringing out a new book, or it should be out. Lessons in Malice, something? No, what's it called? Education in Malice, that's it. Which I think is going to be a dark academia, and I do like the sound of that, so I think at some point I will pick that up. Yeah, I really liked the writing. I thought it was good. I've not read a book in the second person before, and it just really worked. This style of it being a letter to Dracula, yeah, I just really enjoyed it. Okay, next for a video, I read Dating You, Hating You. I read this in my, what was it called? What did I name it? What's it? Scavenger Hunt Picks the book I read, something like that. So yeah, I did a scavenger hunt video, and this is the book I ended up reading that I ended up picking because of it. This one I've had for quite a while, never really thought of myself to pick it up, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I rated it a 4.25. I just thought it was really fun. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. At first, the romance did seem very lusty, and it is definitely that way leaning. It's more lusty than sweet and wholesome, and that is fine. I had wanted more depth, but I feel like we got that depth during the like rivalry prank part of this. Obviously, in this book you have Carter and Evie. They meet at mutual friends party, and they think, oh, like, this maybe could go somewhere. They go on a date, it's all going really well, and then they end up becoming co-workers. This is all in the back, so, and it's kind of like the hating game. They're going after the same job, and it makes what they think is going to be a really great budding relationship, it sours that a little bit, and it's kind of like navigating that while also being like, yeah, this can never work now. So yeah, they do have like that bit of a rivalry prank sort of relationship. The pranks don't last too long. So I think they got more depth in their relationship during that part, because they're having to try and navigate this while also fighting this attraction for each other, and the fact that both of them were so excited at the idea of them together before this happened. I also really liked the ending, because they were obviously fighting over the same job. There was certain ways that could go, and yeah, I just really liked the ending that they chose and how that played out. Also, Carter was very woman-coded. I loved that about him. Literally every single female character in this book absolutely adored him, because he genuinely was just such a nice guy. He was, you would think he had been raised by women, like only women, and not had one male influence in his life at all. Yeah, I loved that about him. This one I rated 2 chili peppers, even though it was lusty. There wasn't actually a whole lot of spice in it, and it wasn't super detailed. It was fairly detailed, but yeah, I just gave it a 2 because I didn't feel scandalized. So I probably had more thoughts while I was reading the book. So if you do want to see more thoughts on what I thought of that book, that was too many words. Yeah, there's the reading channel. The video is up on my channel. Like I say, it was the scavenger hunt picks my read, the one book. Anyway, words have gone, so let's move on. Next I read Off to the Races by Elsie Silver. I read the Chestnut Springs series last year, and I've been wanting to read this series all year, and I never got around to it, even though I've owned this book for a few months. But finally this month I got around to it. I did a mood reading vlog where I read this, and I wanted to read books that I just thought would be really good and that I would really enjoy, that I was looking forward to, because it was my birthday and I wanted to enjoy it myself. This one I rated a 4.5 stars and a 3 chili pepper rating. I loved Billy and Vaughn. I loved how Billy just would not take any man's shit. She was a very strong female main character, and Vaughn just really warmed up as a human being, which I really enjoyed seeing. This is kind of like, obviously this is book 1 in a 4-book series, So there's like the foundation starting to be built on like a found family. I loved Hank. He was just such a nice old man. He just seemed to be this one component keeping everything together. And then the horse, Dee Dee, loved that. I said, again, if you want to see more thoughts, watch the video. I did say in that video I really hoped that the horse would be quite a big part in the book, because it's kind of like what is driving the story, and it was. And I loved those scenes and seeing this relationship develop between Billy and Dee Dee, and sort of this horse learning to trust her. And yeah, he was a bit of an underdog, Dee Dee, and I wanted to see him succeed. And yeah, I loved that aspect of the book. I think for being a little over 400 pages, this book managed to balance really well the romance, the character progression, and also the actual story that's driving the reason that she's there, which is to look after this horse and train this horse. Yeah, I think it was really well balanced for all the different plot points. This one also, I suppose I said the book was over 400 pages. That is including the novella out of the gate. So really, it's only about 300 and like a little over 300 pages, the actual book. So even more so. The novella I haven't actually rated. I did read it. I really enjoyed it. The age gap made me uncomfortable, not because it was 10 years, but because he knew her when she was 10 and he was 20. And like grew up with her. That made me very uncomfortable. So yeah, but it was cute. So conflicting feelings, but I did enjoy it. Then in the same vlog, I read A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett Sinclair. This one I also rated a 4.5. I realise now I haven't put a Chili Pepper rating, so I can't remember. It was quite thirsty. I'm going to say it was a 2.5 to a 3. The spice was good. There wasn't loads of it, but it took a while to get there. It was like they would progress a bit in that area, and then there'd be some reason why it wouldn't happen, and then more would happen, and then there would be another reason. So it kind of was slightly slow burny in that kind of way. So obviously this is a Hades and Persephone retelling. So this is basically if the Greek gods were in the modern world, kind of. They still have their like Olympus and the underworld and all of that, but there's like a new Greece, which new Greece is kind of like if Olympus was on Earth. I guess that's how the best way to explain it. Yeah, so you have Persephone, who is a student at the, is it called the New Athens University? Yeah. And none of the other gods know she exists, so she's well hidden, as if she's immortal. Amortal, not immortal. And anyway, she meets Hades at his nightclub, because of course Hades would have a nightclub. Some of the gods have their own businesses in New Greece that mortals can like go to, so like clothing lines, restaurants, clubs, that kind of thing. And she meets Hades, and they had immediate tension, they had immediate chemistry. I loved that. I absolutely love these two as a couple. I loved Hades. I don't know what it is. Every Hades thing I read, I love him. Hades is a character. I just think he's great. He is my kind of man. And yeah, so obviously there's another 6 books I think to read. The next book is the Hades version of this. So I feel like I'll be alright kind of mixing and match, like not mixing and matching, like not binge reading them, because I've just, well, I say I just read this. I read this as of right now, 2 weeks ago. So maybe I want to leave it a little while before I read Hades' point of view on this, and then the story will progress into Persephone's. I think that's how it goes. So anyway, really enjoyed this, really recommend this, cannot wait to continue. Okay, next on Kindle, I read Birthday Girl. I started this on my birthday because it was, if I wasn't going to read it on my birthday, when was I going to read it? Realistically. Yeah, I rated it a 3.75. Again, I really enjoyed the book. I flew through it. I thought it was so fun. And I loved the drama and the scandal of the whole story. But the age gap made me feel weird. The gap itself being 19 years does not make me feel weird. It's how young she was when it starts. If she were in her 20s and he was in his 40s, I wouldn't feel as weird. It's purely because she is 19. The day they meet is her 19th birthday. That's what makes me uncomfortable. And the fact he keeps referring to her as kid and she keeps making comments like, you're not my dad. You're the one making it weird and making it like daddy kink. I don't like it. You could say, you're not my boyfriend. Again, this is all in the same vlog. If you want to watch it, go watch it. But some of the way things were worded, it just made it weird. And there was that just underlying discomfort throughout the whole thing because of that. But in spite of that, I did still enjoy it. I will also rate this a 3 chili peppers. Once we get to the smut, it's a lot. It's quite often. But the smut doesn't happen until the second half. I would say maybe even like 60-ish% onwards. So the first 60%, there's nothing. So nothing really anyway. So yeah, it was quite spicy for considering when the spice started. Okay, the next book, I started it after Birthday Girl, but I read like 5 books in between reading it. So I haven't actually written down a review for this yet because I don't know how I feel about it. And that's Babel by R.F. Kuang. And when I say I don't know how I feel about it, I enjoyed it. I just don't know how to put it into words because it took me so long to read it. I did rate it a 4.25. I know I enjoyed it. I would say, because obviously this is a dark academia / fantasy, it's very smart. The amount of research that she must have done into language, but the thing is, not just like one language, but multiple languages, specifically English, Latin, Chinese, Greek. Like, there was just so much that went into this. So much, like, I feel smarter after reading this, even though none of it went in. But I just felt smart while reading it. But also the writing itself was so accessible. It was so easy. It flowed really nicely. And thankfully the chapters weren't over 60 pages long. Like the last Dark Academia I read, The Secret History. I just felt like, I don't know how to explain it. And then the ending really had me. The whole like revolution, like I did enjoy this book. I really did. And I cannot get over how accessible it was. I never feel like I'm smart. There's things I know I'm smart with. There's things I know I'm competent with. And there's things I know like I have a really good understanding of. But I never think, oh yeah, I'm smart. But this made me feel like, you know what, maybe just on some levels, maybe I could be. You know, maybe I could broaden my horizons and read things that are a bit more intellectual and enjoy it rather than just my cute little romances, you know, or even my spicy little romances. This has made me want to broaden my like literary horizons in a way I didn't really expect. I mean, The Secret History started that as well in me, but yeah, I was just really surprised how much I enjoyed the story, the plot, the writing of this style of book when it's not something I've ever really read before. I definitely preferred this over The Secret History. I've only put it as a 0.25 over The Secret History, mostly because it took me so long to read it that I feel like I wasn't in it. I would love to reread this at some point and really ruminate on it and spend time only on this book rather than reading 5 books in between. Yeah, it's just a book I really recommend, and I'm really looking forward now to reading Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, and just seeing how she tackles like a regular fiction without the fantasy. And maybe I would even read the Poppy War trilogy by her, who knows. Yeah, I just think R.F. Kuang is an incredibly intelligent human being. I'm kind of in awe for how smart she must be and how much time. I mean, I'm sure it says in here she's also doing a PhD in East Asian languages at Yale, while also being an author. Like, this woman is incredible. Just, yeah. I would also say just the thoughts just come to me. I loved the characters in this book as well, and how they felt so full. I don't know how to explain it aside from that. They had their character progression, their character development, and they had their flaws, and they had such flaws, and they had such, the way they thought, even, it just, yeah, loved them. Absolutely love the characters. Even the bad characters, I just thought they were really good characters. I don't know. Anyway, next I continued on with the Ruby Creek. Is it called Ruby Creek series? What is this song? Gold Rush Ranch. What is wrong with me? It's after 7 o'clock at night and I am clearly, brain is shutting down. I continued on. I continued with the Gold Rush Ranch series with a photo finish. This one was the one I was looking forward to the most, because this is following Violet, who is the Eaton brothers' sister, and I loved the Chestnut Spring series. This one, I only rated it a 4.25, and I gave it a 2.5 chili pepper rating. It wasn't quite as spicy as the first one. This one disappointed me a tiny bit, because I really thought we'd see more of, I wanted one scene or plot point for her to be when she goes back home at some point, and we would see that family dynamic with her brothers and her dad, because I'd read this in the 24-hour reading challenge, or readathon. Again, the video is up already on my channel if you want to watch it. Something I thought I've had since that video finished is, I don't like how she's portrayed her family, because what she has described is not what we see in the Chestnut Spring series. Obviously, the Chestnut Spring series came after this was done, and there will have been developments and changes made, but she acts like her family have done her a disservice by being protective, and she's got this massive chip on her shoulder about feeling coddled, or I think she feels like if someone cares about her to the point of being a bit protective or a bit cautious with her, that they think she is weak and vulnerable and not able to handle herself, and she's got a chip on her shoulder about that. Which she then, I went into more detail about this. It makes her a bit selfish towards the end about a certain issue with Cole, where, quite frankly, not to measure traumas, but his is far worse. I wouldn't even say his is even to be described as a trauma in this case. She just has a chip on her shoulder, and she expects him to get over a trauma, but she won't get over a chip on his shoulder. And I didn't like that. The rest of the time she was very understanding of him, and I love Violet as a character. I feel like in the first book she seems really shy and timid and quiet, and then she comes out of her shell more as she gets more confident with her career and friendships and things. But yeah, I just think I was disappointed by Violet as a character, and I was really looking forward to this book, but I did really enjoy it, and the whole way that they met was really funny, and I loved Cole's character development, and how, this is the thing, Cole put so much effort into bettering himself and into healing, and I didn't feel like we had that from Violet. I think, yeah, I don't know, because the thing is, the Violet we see in Chestnut Springs is not this Violet. It's just weird. It's weird, but yeah, I did enjoy the book nonetheless. It's just, I was slightly disappointed with Violet's character. Next, I read By a Thread by Lucy Score and absolutely loved it. I rated it a 4.75 because I didn't quite have the 5-star feeling, but this book was immaculate. And I gave it a 3.5 chili pepper rating because once the spice happened, Lucy Score has a thing with spice where, I don't even know how to explain it. If you've read a Lucy Score book, you will understand what I mean. I love this couple. They had this bickering, this banter from pretty much page 1 that I absolutely lived for. It was so funny, it was so entertaining, and it just continued. This book is, so Dominic gets this, who's is the MMC, he gets this girl fired from her job at like a pizza restaurant. Her name's Ali, she's the FMC, and his mum basically feels really bad. They work at the same company, so she offers her a job, and so it's very Devil Wears Prada coded, because they happen, basically the mum is like the CEO, is that the best way to, she's the owner of this fashion magazine called Label, and Dominic is like the creative director. So yeah, anyway, and basically he is doing everything in his power for her to quit, because he's not allowed to fire her, and she is just really good at the job. She's going through that, she's got a lot of family issues, a lot of money issues, and when he kind of starts figuring those things out, the small ways that he starts to, like, because he starts to care for her and he's very attracted to her, and like he tells her this, but the little things he does for her without her knowing were immaculate. It just, this was so fun. Like A Touch of Darkness, they had such tension and such chemistry. It was like, you could feel it. It was so good. I really like believed them as a couple. It like, they just felt real. I don't know. Yeah, I never have things to say about books I really love. This is one of those things where all I can tell you is that I absolutely ate up every page. And this book is nearly 600 pages. It's 570 pages, and I read it in 8.5 hours. And I was putting it off because of how long it is. And I'm kicking myself. I could have read that way sooner than now. But I feel like this month was a good month to do it. I'm really happy that I read it. Then I read Kindling by Bonnie Woods. This one I've rated 4 stars. In the 24-hour readathon, I rated it at 4.25. I've since thought about it, and I think it's more of a 4. The start of this book, I was like, oh, this is going to be like, it'll be fine, but I didn't think it was going to be a high rating. So I went into it with mid expectations, and the first few chapters kind of kept that up. But I really quite surprisingly enjoyed this. It's not, I don't think it's worth more than a 4. The LGBTQ plus representation was really good. So the FMC is bi. One of the side characters is a lesbian, and another side character is non-binary, and everyone's just really accepting, and it's just not talked about, because it's the whole point is that it's just, that's who they are, and everyone accepts it, and why it doesn't need to be brought up, it doesn't need to have some special announcement. It was just, these are the characters. I thought it was very organic and very real. I don't think real is the right word. It didn't feel like it was something that's just thrown in there to get some diversity and make it a selling point of the book. It felt authentic. That's the word, authentic, that's what I mean. I did love the small town vibe. It is set in Scotland, and it did kind of have that like British small town vibe, where British small towns have nothing. Maybe a cafe, maybe a tiny little, like a one stop, or just a small convenience store type thing. And that's about it. Like, British small towns are not like American small towns in the slightest. Our small towns have like 500 people max. American small towns still probably have a good few thousand. And there's like a high street. That's not what it's like here. Like a proper small town anyway. It just had a really cozy vibe. It was perfect for autumn, and I liked the character development. I did speak a lot. I had actually quite a lot to say about this book, weirdly enough. So yeah, you can watch the video, like I say. There's so many videos that I filmed this month. It's not even funny. Yeah. Anyway, enjoyed it. I would recommend for autumn. Not that way. I mean, now we're going into winter, so you'll. Anyway. The final book I read in my 24-hour readathon was That Time I Got Drunk and Yeeted a Love Potion at Werewolf by Kimberly Lemming. I read this book in just over 3 hours. It took me 3 hours and 5 minutes to read this book. It's 244 pages long. I read at roughly, I think it was 30 pages faster than my normal reading speed. Roughly, maybe more. I think normally I would have, it should have took me a little bit more than 4 hours to read this, like maybe 4.5 hours. If we took into account my normal reading pace is about a page a minute. I don't know how I read this in 3 hours. I mean, the writing's not small, it's quite big. I flew through this book. It is completely unhinged, completely unserious. There is tentacles. I forgot to mention that in the video. That wasn't one of the content warnings. But there's tentacles involved in this. Never read anything like that before. That was a bit of a jarring experience. But I'm not really very squeamish. I'm very easily entertained, and I did enjoy this book. I rated it 3 stars, and I gave it a 4 chili pepper rating because it was tentacles. Okay, tentacles has to be at least 4 chili peppers, even if it's only one scene. In the whole book, that's spice. This is the second book in a series called Mead Mishaps. Book 1 is That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, which I really enjoyed. I preferred the first book mostly because it had more adventure. This one kind of took place in a few days. Not a whole lot really was happening. It's insta love, but it's just fun. It's just completely unserious, unhinged, fun. It's a 3 stars. I'm continuing the Gold Rush Ranch series. I read The Front Runner. This one I rated a 5 stars and a 3 chili peppers. I loved this book. I was looking forward to this book after reading After the Races. When we meet Mira and Stefan for the first time, I just knew straight away once we saw their characters and how they interacted that them two were going to be a couple. And they did not disappoint. Stefan did not disappoint. I was really looking forward to his character because he's set up to be this really smarmy businessman, this really just nasty, well, not even nasty, just this like underhanded dickhead. And I just knew his story was going to be good, and I was not disappointed. Stefan, listen, normally I'm a Damon girl. This made me a Stefan girl. Different Stefans, but listen, I just loved him. I loved the story. I loved the character progression. I loved the depth we get into his character because he has so much depth from his previous experiences to the front he shows the world to the actual core of his personality that is the real him. I loved him. And then Mira, she is just badass, but she has this secret soft side that I loved seeing. Basically, these two are my favourite characters. Neither of them have any actual flaws. I love them both. And the plot of this, I cried. I actually cried at this. This book, I say the other 2 books didn't really have anything with getting super emotional over. This had a scene that genuinely was like, I mean, it's a romance. I know everything's going to turn out alright. But I was emotional. I cried a little bit. Billy also annoyed me. Billy, loved her in the first book, hated her in this one. She was so annoying. She just had a grudge that she needed to just get over. She just needed to grow up and stop being so... She was being really childish about it, and it really rubbed me the wrong way. So basically, so far, out of all... I think that the Chestnut Springs women, I love all the women. Even Winter, who I hated at first, she grew on me. This is the only woman I've liked in this so far. I think... I'm not 100% sure who the 4th book is about. I haven't double checked. If it's who I think it is, I know I'm going to like her as well. I loved Billy at the time, but this ruined Billy for me. I don't know. She came round and it was fine, so I do still like Billy. And I still like Violet. Anyway, yeah, I don't have much to say because all I can say is that I absolutely adored that book. Anyway, the last book I read, I haven't written a review for yet because, again, I've just read it. It took me 5-6 days to read it, which is fine. I had a couple of days where I didn't read it, and then I finished Babel in the middle of it. So kind of like how with Babel, I don't know what to put into words. I'm the same for this one. I read A Werewolf's Guide to Seducing a Vampire. I literally finished this about 2 hours ago. And I really enjoyed this book. I rated it a 4.25. It was a 2 chili pepper rating. It was spicy, but I wouldn't say it was quite as spicy as... Maybe there's... these aren't super spicy books. There is spice, but it's not... No tentacles are involved, so... Yeah, I think this is the last one of the series, the Glimmer Falls series. I just think book 1, 2 and 3, I've enjoyed all 3 of them. I love the small town. I love the little fan family they've got. All the characters. It's fun. It's so fun. It's such a cozy, fantasy. I mean, I've just put this down as romance. Realistically, it is also fantasy, but it's more romance heavy, but the world it's set in, it's the real world, but all a whole manner of supernatural and paranormal creatures exist, and they just coexist alongside humans, and it's just, that's how it is. So yeah, I don't know, it's just fun, really fun. It didn't really feel like especially like Halloweeny or anything like witchy specifically. This one's obviously following a werewolf and a vampire succubus called Eleanor. The werewolf is Ben. We know him from the first book and the second book. Eleanor's a new character completely to this series. And she's basically been hidden in a crystal that he buys, not thinking it's actually got a vampire succubus in it because he's drunk at the time. And yeah, Ben is like a complete subversion for what a werewolf's meant to be, and he struggles with that, honestly. He's got a lot of anxiety, he loves to knit, he likes to sweat a vest. Basically, we love Ben. He is he is the definition of a gentle giant, and he is just the sweetest person ever. Meanwhile, Eleanor is just also the sweetest person ever, but just completely badass while also being very traumatized, and just somehow she manages to deal with it. I don't know. It was just really fun. So yeah, 4.25. And that is the 13 books that I read this month. Like I say, I feel like I've had a really, really good reading month. I feel very lucky. I had wanted to read more, but to be honest, I think I burnt myself out a tiny bit because I read 7 books in about 7 days. Is that about right? Yeah, I read 7 books in 7 days. So I think I burnt myself out a little bit, but I really wanted to take advantage of the time I had off work to catch up on reading. I actually only have about 3 books left that I need to read to reach my reading goal for the year. So that's exciting. I'm wondering if I can beat it by a decent amount, depending on how much I read next month. Anyway, let's go into the stats. So total pages read this month was 5,132. I had 2 3-star reads, 10 4-stars and 1 5 stars. 8 romance, 3 fantasy, 1 dark academia, 1 dark romance. 1 book was a hardback, 10 were paperbacks, and 2 on Kindle. The hardback, I did forget to say, was Babel, obviously. I did listen to a lot of that on audiobook, so I have put +1 audio-ish. I really liked the audiobook of Babel as well. It was really good. I read it partly on audiobook. I enjoyed reading it and listening to it. It was one of those books where it just worked in both formats. Sometimes if I'm listening to an audiobook, it's because I'm not necessarily getting on with the book, or because I'm trying to get a bunch of reading in and I need stuff to do as well. So I don't normally listen to audiobooks for the sake of listening to the audiobook. Butcher and Blackbird aside, I listened to that specifically because I heard the male narrator was really good, and that is the reason why I listened to that one. Yeah, so I think it's been a very good month, and I'm very excited for next month. I've got quite a few reads that I'm really looking forward to for next month. I'm not doing a TBR specifically because there's a lot of Christmas books I'm going to read, and I don't know whether to do a couple vlogs and stuff, so I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe down below if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!